Good afternoon at Allegheny High School this afternoon with members of the Allegheny wrestling team on Pifer's podcast. I'm Mark Pifer, sports editor of the Virginian Review, and I'd like to welcome my guests. To my far left, Cameron Warleitner, senior wrestler, Logan Scott, senior wrestler, Coach Dale Burdett, and to my right is senior wrestler Zach Russmeisel. And Dale, I'll first talk to you about, we talk so much about building programs, and that's something that I think you guys have been very successful with in wrestling. I know when I did a preview story, you were talking about the numbers being really up, and a lot of factors, I guess, build into that. But talk about your program and the numbers you have and the successes you had over the past couple of years.
We've definitely experienced a lot of success with our wrestling program, and a lot of it is due to the kids that we've had to work with. We've had some great athletes to work with, and we really targeted when we try to talk kids into coming out for wrestling. You see some good athletes. We ask those guys to come along. We see some that may not start out as good athletes. We ask those to come along too, because you don't know who's going to develop into a good wrestler, because they come in all shapes and sizes. We focus a lot on the youth program. We've had our guys actually work with them one-on-one, and I think that really helps, because those kids know our kids that are on the high school team, and it's a lot easier transition for them when they start getting up into the middle school and the high school.
A huge step, I guess, a couple of years ago was getting the team at the middle school, an organized team at the middle school, and then being able to step those guys up into your lineup, when they become freshmen.
That's true. When Dr. Grimacey was the superintendent here, he had some wrestling background, and every time I saw him, I just urged him, this is something we really need, and just stayed with him, and he worked with us, and thankful that he allowed us to start a wrestling program down there at the middle school. And you're only going to be as good as your feeder, because when I started, we did have some 8th graders come up and wrestle with us. But pretty much until they got to high school, they never even saw a wrestling mat or knew anything about it. They're looking for the ropes and the turnbuckles, and that's just not what it's really about.
And that puts you behind the Roanoke schools that have the feeder systems, and I'm sure that's helped you catch up a little bit. Talk about last year's team first. I think 10th at the regional, 10th in the state. A very good season. Lost some key wrestlers from that team, but last year was a special year.
Oh. You hate to see any seniors go, but that was a group that was a larger group as freshmen, and they stuck together. We had one move away, we had one injury, but for the most part, that group stuck together, and they grew together as they went up. And hated to lose those guys. Like I say, that was the highest we'd finished in the state since I've been coaching here, the past 15 years. Those guys had really put a lot of work in the all season. So you hate to see hard workers go, but we knew we had a lot of good kids coming back too.
And just briefly on John Reed, a 2-time state runner-up, now wrestling at VMI. You got to be awful proud to advance somebody onto the college level, and especially at VMI, knowing your VMI background.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And we may have another one. I know Cameron Warleitner's interested in wrestling over there. Hopefully he can go wrestle and compete there too. But that's really cool when you have guys that compete at the Division I level.
We'll talk to some of the wrestlers now. First, I'll talk to Zach over here. Zach Russmeisel, a senior wrestler, 3-sport athlete, wrestling, football, soccer. Zach, it's probably easy to get involved in football. I mean, there's always the youth league football programs. Talk about how you got started in wrestling. I know there's a youth wrestling program, not as well known as the football, but talk about how you got started in wrestling.
When I was about 7 years old, my dad found a wrestling club in Covington at the Covington Armory, and he had us start going for as long as I can remember.
What's different about wrestling than maybe other sports? I know it's an individual sport. I know Coach Burdett teaches that team concept also, but there's something about wrestling when it's you against another guy, and it's just one-on-one stuff.
I mean, like you said, it's just individual, and you can't blame anybody else except for yourself when you mess up or lose or anything like that. And I mean, it builds a lot of character as well. It's one of the toughest sports I've ever played in my entire life.
Logan Scott, tell me about how you got started in, and then tell me about being a senior on this team, maybe replacing that outgoing senior class, which was really good, but also trying to lead the younger kids on your team.
I kind of got interested in wrestling. I watched my brother throughout the years, and he wrestled for years. And then coaches tried to get me out there, so I finally went, and I fell in love with the sport, so I just stayed with it. And then it's come a long ways. Senior year, you're trying to fill in spots, like you said, from John Reed and all the rest of the seniors out there. It really kind of pushes you, which makes you push the rest of the team because you want them to follow in those steps.
When you have the numbers that you guys have, the wrestling room must be probably pretty competitive with wrestle-offs and competing for a spot in that lineup. Talk about maybe the competitiveness in the wrestling room.
Yeah, it's definitely gone up over the years because my freshman year there's a good many out there, but nowhere near as many as there was this year, and hopefully that continues to build, get a lot more athletes out there, get the competitiveness level up.
And then to my far left is Cameron Warleitner. Cameron, another returner, another senior, but a guy that had his season cut short a little bit last year. I know you were having a good year up until you got sick. Just talk about coming back from that sickness. First of all, how did you get involved in it, and then talk about coming back, and hopefully you're at 100% now.
Well, my father was actually a wrestler here at Allegheny High School in the graduated class of '85, and in 7th grade he brought me to the Allegheny duels here. And my first reaction to it was no, definitely not, because one of the first matches I saw, a kid actually got his face busted open and blood was everywhere, and I told him no. But then the middle school coach a few years ago, Coach Bartley, he just said, give me one practice, and from that day forward, I've been completely addicted to the sport of wrestling. And on the topic of getting sick, I just think coming back from it just shows how many lessons wrestling teaches you. It just goes to show that you just don't face wrestling, or you just don't face people in wrestling. You face yourself, you face other aspects, and with mono, it was just another opponent that I had to beat. I mean, it's just the mental battle, it's the physical battle, it's the mental battle, the whole thing, and I guess it really goes to show that you don't really know how much you love something until you're watching it from the sidelines, and that just pushed me and let me know that, hey, I only have 1 year left, and I wasn't able to enjoy last year, so have to put in twice as much work to recover from it.
Absolutely. Dale, talk about the sport of wrestling. As I mentioned before, I had brothers that were involved, and my brother wrestled on the collegiate level, and I just remember it was years ago, and they did things quite a bit different then. Now they have some things in line for weight loss and that kind of thing. But talk about I always talk about wrestling being something you can't halfway be in. I coach basketball, and I know we have basketball players that come to practice for 2 hours a day, and you can kind of come to practice 2 hours a day and then forget about it, go home, eat a big steak or whatever. And wrestling is a little bit different. You got to take care of your body a lot more. It's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I think it's just something you got to be all in.
I agree. You do have to be all in, or it's one of those sports there's nowhere to hide because of the individual aspect of it out there on the mat. If you're really not into it, you're not going to be ready to compete, and then you get beat.
Right.
And then you're not ready for the next time, and then you keep getting beat down. So you really have to like it and like competition. And, like being one-on-one situations. There is a team aspect to wrestling, obviously, but we have to have individual successes to have a team success. So, that is crucial. It has changed a lot. Even back when I was in high school, the weight stuff, they've made it a whole lot more safe now. There's more safeguards with the weight management and how much people can lose. Really, there's guys that would like to lose more. We're at that point now. It's so safe that there's guys that would really like to go further down than the test will allow them. And before it was coaches driving you down a weight. It was the idea was a bigger frame and a lower weight class, and
right.
You're going to excel.
Right. And I say a smaller school, Allegheny not being a small school, but 3A school in the grand scheme of things, still a small school. How big is it to fill all the weight classes? I mean, that's a huge thing. I know Covington's having some numbers problems filling weight classes, but for you guys right now to be able to fill all the weight classes, that makes you competitive as a team.
Oh, absolutely. Last year, as good as we were, we were forfeiting the 2 lightest weight classes. So to have those filled this year, that's just points that you're not giving away. Or if somebody else doesn't have it, you're not earning those. So it's good to have somebody in each weight class, regardless of skill level. You got to fill them first to have any shot to win those matches. So, but if you're going to be successful in dual matches, and even in tournaments, when you score points, more people scoring or more points, it's better to have everybody, all 14 guys.
I guess it's a little ways away, but not very far away. Let's talk about the Allegheny Duels Tournament, something that got started years ago. I think the date is January 2nd, right, here at Allegheny. And if you haven't been here, the Duels Tournament, I think 8 teams, is that right? 8 or 10?
7, I think.
7?
We're trying to get to 8 right now.
It's an all-day thing. Come down and watch the Allegheny Duels January 2nd. Talk about that tournament, and that's kind of you guys' big deal as a home meet. You've made that into a pretty big thing.
Yeah, it's always been a big thing. When I wrestled for Coach Tom Byrne, I'm pretty certain he's the one that started that Allegheny Duels. And at the time, you pretty much wrestled individual duel matches and maybe one tournament. We had a Christmas tournament we went to. There wasn't all these duel tournaments like they have now. So Allegheny was on the innovative side of things and starting that duels tournament. Now, the structure of it has changed throughout the years. You know, sometimes it was like a team bracketed tournament, and now we do more of a round robin type thing. Right. You know, 2 pools. You wrestle everybody in your pool, and the top 2 wrestle each other for the championship. Second in pools wrestle for 3rd and 4th, and so forth.
Goals in place, Zach. Your senior year, your last go round with wrestling at the high school level. Any goals in place, and talk about how maybe you're looking forward to that duels tournament here on your home. I know you don't have a whole lot of home stuff going on, but tell me how you're looking forward to wrestling here at Allegheny.
Goals-wise, my main goal right now is to get the pin record for Allegheny High School. It's set at 101 right now, and I'm at about 81, right? And that's been my goal ever since freshman year, to get that record. And for the Allegheny Duels, I'd say really I'm just ready to get to it and show people who Allegheny really is. Have people that live around here be able to come around and see what the sport of wrestling is.
Logan, talk about maybe your goals for the year, and also a thought on home wrestling. Like I said before, you guys travel a lot. I know a lot of Saturdays are sun up, and usually probably before the sun's up to sundown. But talk about goals for the year and how much you're looking forward maybe to the duels tournament.
My goals for the year, I'd obviously like to make it a stage. Just to say you've been there, it's not an easy goal to master, and it's just a different atmosphere. Once you get out there, it's a completely different level of wrestling, so that's a big thing to say if you've been there. And along with wrestling at the high school, which is one last year, you never get to wrestle in this gym again, so might as well make the best of it. So hopefully we.
And Cameron, talk about, I know you had a big win at the River, is it the River Rumble, is that right? At Stanton River, knocked off like the conference champion from last year.
Yes.
Maybe talk about goals for the year for you, and as Logan mentioned, getting to that state tournament is a big deal, and I know that's got to be one of them.
Oh, definitely. Last year, my main goal right before I fell out, I actually had sticky notes all over my wall mentioning goals I want, and that the biggest one was conference champion. And ever since he did win it, he's been one of the names on that list of people to knock off. And just because I beat him once doesn't mean we'll run into each other again, and it's going to get tougher. But that's just how you know how competitive people are. That's how you know how good you are. Is just because you beat somebody doesn't mean that you're going to beat them the rest of the time, especially at the duels. We've taken that tournament 2 years now, and I personally plan in my weight division. I'd love to get first in that division. I also want the team to win, right, and ultimately become conference champion, regional champion. My ultimate goal is to win states, so it's just the ultimate goal I'm searching for.
And real quick, Dale, we'll finish up with the state tournament. I remember years ago when I first took the job, and it was like I was going to the state tournament, the first time I'd ever been to the state wrestling tournament. And I can vividly remember pulling in that parking lot, and I thought something else might have to be going on too, because this many people wouldn't come into a wrestling tournament. And you walk in that Civic Center, and it's crazy how many people are there. It's got to be a totally different animal as far as wrestling there and coaching there. Talk about that state tournament atmosphere and what I guess these three guys are really shooting for.
Well, as a coach, it's really fun to coach at that level, in that atmosphere, when that many people are excited about the sport. And we don't take it for granted, because there's been years when we didn't qualify anybody to get there. So we value it very much. We value it so much on our shirts we got last year. I put a little hidden message in there as SCC for Salem Civic Center, and that's the ultimate goal for all these guys, is to try to get to that level. Not everybody's going to get there. There's some very good wrestlers that have not made it there. But that's the ultimate goal. You got to keep your goals high, and that's a really awesome atmosphere. So these guys are all capable of getting there. You know, you just don't know how the brackets work out in regional sometimes, because they don't seed it. It's pairings, and I wish they'd go to something where they could seed and keep the best wrestlers separated in brackets, but they don't always do that. So sometimes two of the top best wrestlers are wrestling in the match to go to states. It's just sometimes the luck of the draw.
Right. So Allegheny started their wrestling season last week. They go up to Covington. They win a match. They participate in a tournament at Stanton River. A very good finish, I think, placing 9 in that tournament. This weekend, they'll go to Wilson Memorial for the Hornet Duels, and best of luck to you guys for that. A big event in the area this weekend would be the Rotary Tournament, the Rotary Basketball Boys Tournament. It's Friday and Saturday right here at Allegheny High School. The schedule: Friday, Allegheny and Covington play in a second semifinal game on Friday night. The 6 o'clock opener is between Stewart's Draft and Heritage, and if you haven't seen or know anything about Stewart's Draft basketball, it might be worth a trip down to Allegheny. They play a little bit of different system. They're going to run up and down the floor. They want to score a lot of points. They're going to give up a lot of points. They play like 15 different players. It's a really unique system. It's called the Grinnell system, and it's something to watch for this weekend. On Saturday, these guys will be at Wilson Memorial. We'll be here for the Rotary Tournament Championship and Consolation. Again, that starts at 6 o'clock. Thanks to these guys for taking some minutes out of their day. We'll be back next week with a different school, a different team, and make sure you pick up a copy of the Virginian Review 3 days a week now. We're on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Until next week, I'm Mark Pifer, sports editor of the Virginian Review. Have a great day.